Good morning, everybody. Time to get up and go to work. And yep, another morning in the crypto world. And this is Eureka John with Eureka Street Crypto Hub. And it is 5:42 in the morning on June 3rd, 2021. Coming at you live from Leander, Texas. And this is my video blog. Welcome. Hey, Randy. Nice of you to jump on again right at the beginning, man. Doing pretty good. I guess you get an email notification or something. This is my video blog, and this is me learning about crypto. And I may be right, I may be wrong, but either way, this is all a process, and you're kind of along this ride with me, and I'm just documenting it. And sometimes I've looked back on some episodes, and some are good, and some are really cringy. Especially my first episodes, I was really uncomfortable the entire time, just like a total robot. I've gotten over that, and now I'm just kind of willy-nilly just doing it, man. I'm not sponsored by anybody, and I'm not shilling anything. I'm not doing this for money or anything like that. Just maybe a thumbs up on the YouTube or Odyssey or BitChute. If you're on Theta, well, all right. I'm able to actually give little things on the Theta, so they give us these little crates and NFTs and things like that we can give away. So I'll give one to Randy here. All right. Not sure how much value is in that, but either way, so let's take a quick look at CoinGecko. Let's see where we are. I know it's going to be a green day today. I just have a feeling it's going to be a complete green day. Everybody's in Miami right now, all the people that actually are important. So I'm not in Miami, that's for sure. Let's see here. We got Bitcoin at 39,475, Ethereum at 2887, Binance at 430. I'm telling you, it's gonna be a green day. Tether's $1. I mean, hey, So let's see here. Cardano $1.88. Is it gonna hit $2 again? That's gonna be an interesting question. The Doge at 42 cents. XRP $1.07. Polkadot 2838. USD stablecoin, Uniswap 2928. Internet Computer ICP Insane Clown Posse Clown Token is at 114.91. Chainlink 3274. So that's creeping on up there too. Bitcoin Cash 734.27. Litecoin 197.47. Polygon Matic $1.87. Still lots of stuff going on there. I've been reading articles now where they're working with Augur for sports betting and stuff like that. And if I have time, I'll talk a little bit about that today. But I have something else I wanted to talk about. Solana 37.44. Everything else is doing pretty good. We're Theta Network. A85. Theta's creeping its way back up there. I have a feeling this entire month is just going to be an accumulation process for Theta before June 30th, to where it just goes and takes off. And T-Fuel is included. T-Fuel's included there. I did want to see where Zilliqa is. I do hold Zilliqa, and I have it staked. And you can get some really good staking rates for Zilliqa. It's at 14 cents. Okay, the highest I think I've seen it has been 22 cents, 23 cents. Okay, all-time high, May 6th, 25 cents is where it got up to. I think Zilliqa is going to make its way back up there as well. Cool. Anyway, yesterday's podcast kind of got my gears turning about the whole, idea that Lynette Zhang was saying that they purposely engineered this entire crypto asset market in order to make us dump all our money and drop all our physical gold and silver to buy into the crypto market and Bitcoin, and in order to drain all that out of our accounts so they can quietly come in and scoop up our gold and silver and then give us these crypto assets that will end up completely going to zero, and then they'll basically rob us blind in that way. interesting point that she makes, and there might be some truth to it. We do have this Basel III that is coming out, and I'll explain what that is, because that kind of was like, what is this Basel III? Because I'm a complete financial ignoramus. I don't come from finance. I majored in Spanish and in undergrad, and then I went to seminary. I have a master's of divinity for academic purposes. I was not trying to be a pastor or a priest or anything. So, but the point is I never learned how to balance a checkbook or anything for that matter, So here I am trying to learn all this stuff from scratch, but maybe it's good that I'm learning it outside of an institution and learning it on my own as I go here. Maverick style. Yeah, so that's what I'll call it. Yeah, sure. Let's go, where was I? Yeah, so Lynette Zhang was saying that. I think she, when she said that when they came out with Bitcoin, as kind of a way to, take our gold and silver, I was just, that's when I knew, all right, she doesn't exactly understand crypto as kind of a Web3 development, and is purely looking at it as a form of digital gold, and purely looking at it as only a function of cryptocurrency and digital gold. And crypto goes well beyond that. It goes into Web 3.0. It's basically, if we were able to tokenize TCP/IP, the internet protocol at the very beginning, and to monetize that, that's kind of what is happening here. It is the .com of the 90s, and people are creating and innovating and creating tons of cool projects and completely revolutionizing the financial industry and creating decentralized finance and taking out the middleman, and basically creating stumbling blocks for banks to have to adjust to. And they have to figure this out, or they're going to become dinosaurs. And with, what is it, the $45 billion in fees that Bank of America has charged their customers in this past year of 2020, they deserve to possibly have their legs broken. And same thing with Chase Bank and Wells Fargo and all those banks. The billions of dollars of NSF and other types of fees that they've collected from the last people that should be paying these types of fees, just because they might make a mistake on balancing their account, or they have some subscription that pops through for $1.99 on some stupid app they downloaded a year ago, and then suddenly, boom, it's $35 NSF fee, and maybe 2 or 3 of those little subscriptions pop through one month when they forgot about it. Boom, there goes $110 worth of fees right there. And it's absolutely insane. And these are the people that can't be affording to pay that, and they're just completely crippling the average Joe here. So yes, the banks do need a little wake-up call, and they need a little democratization and a little bit of cryptocurrency in their life to kind of throw a wrench into everything that they're doing to people right now. So, but anyway, what is this Basel III that they're talking? Because I kept on saying, well, when Basel III comes around, gold's going to be, it's sitting pretty, and it's going to be a good position to be in gold, and it's going to be a bad position to be in crypto. All right, well, let's take a look here. Let's go to Basel III definition. What is Basel III? It's a 2009 international regulatory accord that introduced a set of reforms designed to mitigate risk. Hold on one second. Let me just bring this up so you can read it a little easier, and I'll just minimize me. Okay, it's a 2009 international regulatory accord that introduced a set of reforms designed to mitigate risk within the international banking sector by requiring banks to maintain proper leverage ratios and to keep certain levels of reserve capital on hand. So it's basically telling them to keep some money in their banks and to not completely borrow against all these assets that people have entrusted with them to hold in their banks. Because it's basically, you giving a family member, a box of gold or a box of cash, saying, I need you to keep a hold of this. This is, keep it safe. They're like, yeah, sure, okay, and then they go sneak off in the other room and they're betting on horses and everything else with that money, and they feel certain that they're going to increase that box. But then what if something unexpected happens in the market, like a derivatives bubble pops, and they realize that all these mortgage notes that they've been buying, trying to make a profit on, just suddenly are not worth and based on anything, and the entire house of cards crumbles, and then your entire box that you lent your cousin is suddenly worth nothing and devalued, and they don't have anything left of that. So I guess it's a international regulatory accord that introduced a set of reforms designed to mitigate risk within international banking sector by requiring banks to maintain proper leverage ratios, not getting all crazy with the leverage and the borrowing and the locking up of their funds to try to gamble with, and to keep certain levels of reserve capital on hand to make sure that they have liquidity. Basel III was rolled out by the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, then a consortium of central banks from 28 countries shortly after the credit crisis of 2008. Although voluntary implementation deadlines for new rules was originally 2015, the date has been repeatedly pushed back, and where it currently stands at January 1st, 2022. And I think January 1st, 2022 is for the United States. For Europe, it's coming right up on June 26th, 2021, I believe. This month is when the Basel III will be implemented, I guess. And I'll go into what that means here in a second. Hey, how you doing, Atilia Luno? Nice of you to jump on. So key takeaways: Basel III is an international regulatory accord that introduced a set of reforms designed to improve regulation, supervision, and risk management within the banking sector. It's an iterative step in the ongoing effort to enhance the banking regulatory framework, and it's a consortium of central banks from 28 countries published Basel III in 2009, largely in response to credit crisis resulting from 2008 economic recession. Hey, 29LH06. All right. So everybody's jumping on. I'm just talking about Basel III here and what it is, because that lady Lynette Zhang yesterday talked about when Basel III gets implemented, which is very soon in Europe, June 26th, that everything will be reset back to gold, and everything's going to have to be backed 1-to-1 with gold, dollars. And how is that going to look, and what is that going to do to the banking industry? It's going to absolutely throw a wrench in a lot of things. So understanding Basel, it's alternatively referred to as the Third Basel Accord or Basel Standards, which is part of a continuing effort to enhance the international banking regulatory framework. It specifically builds on Basel I and Basel II documents in a campaign to improve the banking sector's ability to deal with financial stress, improve risk management, and promote transparency. On a more granular level, Basel III seeks to strengthen the resilience of individual banks in order to reduce the risk of system-wide shocks and prevent future economic meltdowns. Right now, they are possibly facing a meltdown with the implementation of a lot of these DeFi protocols that are happening outside of the banking system, and they do not like this. They're taking a bunch of measures here. Let's go to a couple other articles. Let's see here. Okay, so Basel III, the gold, the dollar, and the Great Reset. So he goes through a lot of acronyms here. Basel III, as outlined in my previous two articles, could lead to a dramatic change in gold prices with a serious fallout in other market sectors. June 28, 2021 approaching, so that's when the Europe version is going to be implemented, where the NSFR standards become implemented. We look at how the dollar will react and where Basel III implementation is a front for a much bigger macro event. So NSFR, I'll go over that in a second. The most important characteristic of Basel III, the NSFR implemented by the BIS, commences on June 28th. The LBMA, who have tried and successfully pushed back for years, have been granted an extension to this. Again, however, this will likely not matter one iota, as banks and countries, for that matter, are already signing up to compliance. Therefore, an extension has been granted to the LBMA, with the rest of the 63 countries acquiescent. It is hardly an allowance of exemption of the rules. Okay, so what are all these acronyms? This is where I was like, NSFR, BIS, LBMA. What is this? What is going on here? What is Basel III? And is it really going to you reset everything back to the gold standard. Okay. NSFR. This is, where did this go? Okay, net stable funding ratio. NSFR is a product of the Bank of International Settlements, and this is the bank for the central banks, the Bank of International Settlements. So about BIS, our mission is to support central banks' pursuit of monetary and financial stability through international cooperation and to act as a bank for central banks. To pursue our mission, we provide central banks with a forum for dialogue, international cooperation, a platform for responsible innovation and knowledge sharing, in-depth analysis, insights on core policy issues, and sound and competitive financial services. It's just, it's up there on the hierarchy of banks, and by the time they get down to the branch banks, well, that's plebes, then, to deliver on our mission, we are and be able to respond to the evolving nature of our business. Our work is anchored in strong core values that shape the way in which we work. These values are the shared principles and beliefs that unite our staff and guide our actions to promote a cohesive, purpose-driven culture to support central banks through their current and future challenges. We deliver value through excellence and performance. We are committed to continuous improvement and innovation. We act with integrity. We foster a culture of diversity, inclusion, sustainability, and social responsibility. And all the usual talking points that people sit around and get paid a buttload of money to sit here and dream up on their PowerPoint presentations in boardrooms. Established in 1930, the BIS is owned by 63 central banks representing countries from around the world that together account for 95% of world GDP. Its head offices in Basel, Switzerland, has 2 representative offices in Hong Kong and Mexico City, as well as innovation hub centers around the world. Alright, so that's pretty much what you need to know about BIS for now. What are they talking about here with this NSFR, the net stable funding ratio? It is basically a way to keep the banks from going broke during extremely volatile activity. So during the early liquidity phase of the financial crisis starting in 2007, many banks, despite meeting the existing capital requirements, experienced difficulties because they did not prudently manage their liquidity. The crisis drove home the importance of the liquidity to the proper functioning of financial markets and the banking sector. Prior to the crisis, asset markets were buoyant and funding was readily and cheaply available. The rapid reversal in market conditions showed how quickly liquidity can dry up and also how long it can take to come back. So it did take a while after the 2008 crash. The banking system came under severe stress, which forced central banks to take action in support of both the functioning of money markets and in some cases individual institutions. The difficulties experienced by some banks arose from failures to observe the basic principles of liquidity management. The basic principles of liquidity management. Yes. And then they cite some book or article here. The sound principles offer detailed, that's the name of the book or the article, offer detailed guidance on the risk management and supervision of funding liquidity risk and should help promote better risk management in this critical area, provided that they are fully implemented by banks and supervisors. The committee will accordingly continue to monitor the implementation of these fundamental principles by supervisors to ensure that banks and their jurisdictions adhere to them. It's just a set of regulatory rules, and then down here, the NSFR is defined as the amount of available stable funding relative to the amount of required stable funding. The ratio should be equal to at least 100% on an ongoing basis. Available stable funding is defined as the portion of capital and liabilities expected to be reliable over the time horizon considered by the NSFR, which extends to 1 year. So the amount of such stable funding required stable funding of a specific institution is a function of the liquidity characteristics and residual maturities of the various assets held by that institution, as well as those off-balance sheet exposures. So basically saying the central banks always have to maintain a ratio of 100% of the amount of stable funding divided by the required amount of stable funding. Okay, it's a ratio. So so amount of stable funding to required amount of stable funding it has to be greater than 100%. It consists of primarily internationally agreed upon definitions and calibrations. Some elements, however, remain subject to national discretion to reflect jurisdiction-specific conditions. In these cases, national discretion should be explicit and clearly outlined in the regulations of each jurisdiction. Okay, so they're basically teaching CBDCs, central banks, basically how to operate, and giving them rules and guidelines. And this is who the central banks have to answer to. As kind of what I'm gathering from this. And regulations that they have to adhere to. So it's their boss. It's the boss's boss. Okay. Anyway, so I won't go too deep down that rabbit hole. I just know that this banks have to adhere to this net stable funding ratio. So let's go back over to this article. So let's see if we can understand this a little better. The LBMA is a London bullion market. So it's the gold market in London. Basel III, as outlined in my previous two articles, could lead to a dramatic change in gold prices with a serious fallout in other market sectors. June 28th approaching, where the new NSF standards become implemented, we look at how the dollar will react and whether Basel III implementation is a front for a much bigger macro event. The most important characteristic of Basel III, the NSFR, the funding ratio, net stable funding ratio, implemented by the Bank of International Settlements, commences on June 28th. The London bullion market, who have tried and successfully pushed back for years, have been granted an extension to this. However, this will not likely matter one iota, as banks and countries for that matter are already signing up to compliance. Therefore, an extension has been granted to the London bullion market, with the rest of the 63 countries acquiescent. Is hardly an allowance of the exemption of the rules. When considering the fallout this could have, at this juncture there are some analysts that believe this could be the end of the dollar. Many still believe the dollar to be on its knees by the end of 2021, regardless of Basel III, and that some still cling on to its stature as the world's reserve currency and that it won't be allowed to fail. Gold is money, and there's an argument to say that it is a currency as its value is traded against the US dollar. If you buy gold, you're effectively shorting the dollar or betting its value will decrease. While there is obviously more to it than that, fiat currency has and continues to lose its purchasing power over the years. Gold has always been a hedge or security against dollar debasing and inflation. How will this affect the dollar? Is a very interesting situation bubbling away, and this comes from China. It's widely known that since Basel III rules were announced, the Chinese have been stockpiling gold. They also mine it, so it's impossible to know how much they have, and how many estimates claim around 20,000 tons, way more than is currently declared. If this is true, and it well and truly trumps the USA's stockpile, China's been trialing their new digital currency, and it would make sense this could be a pretext for a digital or cryptocurrency gold-backed format which will launch to rival or replace the dollar. It's no secret China wants their currency as a world reserve, and in 2016 the IMF added the yuan to the special drawing rights basket, although it sits with others and nothing has happened since. Notwithstanding this, the digital yuan is groundbreaking and could be unleashed as gold-backed currency. At the very least, the Chinese could still see gold holdings as sine qua non. Perhaps their gold amassed I don't know what this symbol is, if somebody could tell me. Perhaps their gold amassed one figure will be disclosed when Basel III is implemented, as they see an opportunity to power in before others do. Okay. Putting to one side the rumored stockpile, China is less and less reliant upon the dollar now, and they're very well placed should it fail. I think the dollar is failing, honestly, especially since I work in manufacturing and I'm seeing the prices of all these commodities going up, brass, plastic, polyester, metals, all types of things, shipping, everything is just completely blowing through the roof, and it sucks having to raise prices on all my customers right now, and they're pissed. And then, of course, home values and everything else. I went through all this yesterday. But, however, they aren't the only big economy that's loosening ties. In the last decade, Russia has dumped the dollar and quadrupled its gold holdings, with Putin stating Russia is now not reliant on the U.S. currency whatsoever. It's even rumored that there's an alliance between China and Russia on destroying the dollar. If the dollar were to fail, and if the last year is anything to go by, the remainder of 2021 could see an explosion in commodity prices. Well, it's already happening. History has taught us that financial systems move in cycles, and the dollar could be in its final stages. The swan song of the dollar. Is this the swan song of the dollar? So, returning to the upcoming event, back in the 2018 World Gold Council stated that central banks, in response to Basel III rule changes, added 651 tons of gold to their reserves in 2018. It's a 50-year record. Bear in mind that the time Basel III rulers were scheduled to commence next year, before Basel III NSFR rules, banks holding gold was costly and not particularly worthwhile as a Tier 3 asset. And back in 2018, gold did go through a huge dip. Now a Tier 1 asset, gold is attractive to hold because it can and will be used as a security to back lending and potentially offset debt. Currently, and for years, the Tier 1 assets have consisted of treasury bonds and cash. Fiat, as mentioned above, loses purchasing power over time, and treasury bonds come with other problems. However, gold carries no counterparty risk. So cash is no longer a Tier 1 asset, and treasury bonds are having problems. What is a Tier 1 asset, you may ask? So this is what is Basel. Understand Basel. Okay, I did have this pulled up. Not here. Regulatory frameworks. No. Well, shoot. I lost the link where it talked about what Tier 1 assets are and versus Tier 2. Let's see here. Gold is a risk-free asset. Net stable funding ratio. Okay, the NSF requirement will make the handling of unallocated gold more complicated, but there's a solution to it. In plain terms, a net stable funding ratio will be used to oblige banks to finance long-term assets with long-term money greater than 1 year to avoid liquidity failures. Specifically for all precious metals, the NSFR requirement will imply an 85% required stable funding to be held by banks against the financing and clearing of precious metals transactions. It's a highly significant rise compared to its pre-Basel III level of 0. In plain terms, it suggests that regulators are now considering gold to be an illiquid asset, a Tier 1 asset, that is even riskier to hold than exchange-traded equities. And as risky, all other equities. Okay, I know it sounds quite unpleasant for banks and their bullion business, but does it mean there will be no way to hold physical gold bars or any other form of gold without fulfilling this requirement? No, I would just say the opposite is true. Specifically, clearing members could solve this RSF problem by allocating their precious metals. What does it mean? Allocating simply means converting the client's accounts from unallocated to allocated gold. Allocated is a Tier 1 asset. Unallocated is a Tier 2 asset. Let me explain with a simple example. Let us assume that a clearing bank has 40 customers holding the pool of $50 billion unallocated gold. The bank can allocate gold bars from its balance sheet to each of its 40 clients. By converting the client's accounts from unallocated to allocated, the clearing bank can avoid the negative impact from NSFR and its gold business, as it will no longer holding gold on its balance sheet. This will be great for the clearing banks. However, the requirement to hold gold on an allocated basis will be more expensive than holding it on an unallocated basis, so the cost will still rise. But what is the exact difference between allocated and unallocated precious metals? There's quite a big difference. In this guy's other article, he wrote about the SPDR Gold Shares Exchange Traded Fund, and the differences between paper gold and physical gold. In short, allocated gold is physical gold, where unallocated gold is paper gold. Allocated gold suggests that you are the direct owner of the yellow metal and you have no counterparty risk. Unallocated gold, however, remains the property of the bank. The investor is a creditor of the bank but is not the direct owner of the bullions. As his colleague explained, unallocated gold can be borrowed, loaned out more than once. This means that there might be many claims on the very same amount of gold. This cannot happen to allocated gold by definition. In other words, the banks will be punished for holding unallocated gold and rewarded for holding the actual unleveraged physical metal. In simple terms, this makes it expensive for banks to engage in any forms of hypothecation or gold lending. That is also important because gold lending is one of the main tools used to short gold. That's why reducing this activity makes it more complicated to short the shiny metal and is therefore bullish. The Basel III agreement will have a major impact on the European banks and also the UK banks. The net stable funding ratio requirement will make it difficult for banks and other institutions to keep unallocated gold. So one of the likely solutions will be to allocate gold. The very fact gold will become a risk-free asset is highly bullish. It will make central banks and other investors raise their gold reserves. All this is highly advantageous for investors holding physical gold. And I think about this and how it relates to cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Bitcoin and gold kind of have this relationship. I'll have to look at graphs and at gold and Bitcoin and kind of try to compare those. I don't have a lot of time left. I could probably go on this for a long time, actually. But this guy down here, he says, the G20 leaders have been pushing this Great Reset agenda for some time. Biden even quoted the authors of the Great Reset with his Build Back Better motto that every single world leader, somebody did a compilation of all these world leaders saying Build Back Better, and you know that they are completely operating on some kind of script by our overlords that run all the puppets, that run all our nation states. And so Biden, then they're all saying, build back better, build back better. So Kristalina Georgieva, MD of the IMF in Washington, even called for a Bretton Woods moment of Q4 in 2020. It would make sense, wouldn't it? Small banks that can't afford to stack gold close down, leaving the cartel of the big boys to set a minimum gold price. The higher the price of gold, the less debt the banks have. It's like monetary magic policy. It's so brazen you can see it happening. By the time Basel IV kicks in 2023, gold count could have its second revaluation event. So you can imagine a minimum price of gold not just once, but twice. Some gold analysts have been touting this scenario for a while now. Why wouldn't the price of gold be used to offset the debt banks have? What other options are there? The debt clock in the U.S. currently stands at $28 trillion, and this is not inclusive of the recently signed off Biden $1.9 trillion stimulus, and this was written before this now proposed $6 trillion stimulus. This debt increases by $1 million every 23 seconds. I just want 23 seconds. That's it. Money printing creates more available money and therefore leads to a weaker dollar. Basel III will lead to less gold being available to trade, creating a very tight supply-demand ratio. According to almost all reports on net trading figures, less than 1% of traders across the world who hold gold in their portfolios. What could the price of gold get to when paper disappears? This figure jumps to even 3% of physical, let alone higher. It feels like we're on the precipice of a huge change here. The banking system is broken and needs a huge overhaul, and this could be it. The Keynesian approach just isn't working. Crazy numbers have been thrown around on what gold prices could rise to, and I'll leave you to form your own opinion on what big industry analysts are predicting. However, if we were to remove all the could out of the noise around Basel III, one key fact is clear. The NSFR will considerably reduce, if not completely eliminate, naked shorting of paper gold by the big banks. They have to have a provable 1-to-1 ratio of physical gold, which will be audited to trade or use it. Paper gold and derivatives will become incredibly expensive and will be traded far, far less. This alone will lead to a price discovery, a fair price for gold. With that price is all we have to find on the June 28, 2021 and beyond. If the dollar does collapse, then we could be talking numbers beyond our wildest dreams. No wonder many big name precious metal analysts are calling for the most significant event of their careers. So, if gold goes through the roof and the dollar collapses, of course, we're going to be stuck with these dollars, and I'll have like $1 million for the little bit of gold I have, right? But who cares how many dollars I have at that point, right? Because the dollar's not going to be worth anything. And this also applies to cryptocurrency. Who cares how much dollars I have in comparison to Bitcoin? Because at that point, the dollar's not going to be worth anything. At what point are you is the point of no return where you're just like, you know what? I'm not selling any of my crypto back into dollars because the dollar is just not worth anything unless I really need to have to pay my mortgage or my groceries in dollars instead of crypto. Why would I sell into dollars at this point? You know, the question is becoming more and more looming every single day, and dollars every single day. And especially when I go to work and I see, you know, how much I have to raise prices on my customers and stuff like that, I see less and less value of moving my cryptos and gold and silver and stuff like that into dollars. And I'm only moving the stuff that I need for my day-to-day life into dollars at this point. And at this point, crypto is becoming more and more widely adopted as a form of payment. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that by the time the year ends. I don't know. I gotta go. I gotta get to work. It's 6:17 in the morning. I still need to make my smoothie and put my shoes on. But this is going to be something for me to think about. I'm going to listen to this podcast here. Where is it? Right here. Basel III and Cryptocurrencies on Deloitte, I guess. I'll try to listen to this on the way to work. And I'll see if I can get back to you tomorrow on this podcast and try to tie this back into cryptocurrencies a little more, since this show is about cryptocurrencies. But I don't think that you can fully understand cryptocurrencies, and especially cryptos like XRP and Stellar and stuff like that, and Quant Network. These are more banking-oriented cryptocurrencies. If you don't understand these things going on in the banking system, and I'm starting to learn this, you know, that there are various different types and categories of cryptocurrencies, and you can't fully understand XRP, Stellar, and Quant Network without understanding everything that is going on here. I'm still struggling to understand all this stuff as I go along, and that's the purpose of this podcast. All right, guys. So I don't know. That being said, I'm gonna put on my outro music here, and get on my merry way. And hopefully I've given you guys some food for thought this morning, and you can start your day with some of this stuff in mind. And I'd love to hear any type of thoughts and feedback on this. And I will talk to you guys. See you later, Randy. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. All right, bye.